Navigating the legal world can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. The Indiana Lawyer Podcast is here to help you understand the laws impacting your life, work, and community. Whether you're a legal professional, a business owner, or someone who wants to know how Indiana law shapes the world around you, this podcast is for you. We're here to bring you clarity and insights like no one else can. This podcast is brought to you by Taft, today's modern law firm.
Welcome back to the Indiana Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Maura Johnson. For this week's episode, we're taking it to the court as we chat with Frank Pulice, General Counsel for Pacers Sports and Entertainment, which includes the NBA's Indiana Pacers, the WNBA's Indiana Fever, and most recently, the NBA G League's Noblesville Boom. Pulice is coming off a stellar season with the Pacers, which ended just shy of a national championship, and is now switching gears in preparation for the upcoming WNBA All-Star Game, which takes over Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis on July 18th and 19th.
Taft, today's modern law firm. At Taft, we cultivate a highly respectful, transparent workplace that fosters creativity, teamwork, inclusion, and diversity. We couple our culture with a client-first approach, rewarding lawyers who understand their clients' goals and work to deliver success. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
Mr. Pulice, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
To start off, can you just kind of explain what your role is as General Counsel for Pacers Sports and Entertainment?
Sure. Generally, it's just a fancy way of saying that I oversee all of the legal issues for the Indiana Pacers, the Indiana Fever, now the Noblesville Boom, which used to be the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, our G League team, and Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and everything that happens basically in and around the Fieldhouse. So that could run from player-related matters to coaching contracts, employment issues, sponsorship deals, media rights, concessions, immigration, tax, litigation oversight, and everything in between. It really runs the gamut, but it's vast. The term general counsel is right? It's the overseeing all the general issues that happen in our organization from a legal perspective.
And how did you kind of get here? I know before we got on camera, we were kind of talking about your background, but what brought you to this position specifically?
Yeah, I never thought about being a lawyer, actually. I was going into my senior year at Purdue, and there was a recession. I wanted to be an advertising copywriter. That's what I thought I'd do, radio and TV, right? There was no digital at the time. Growing up in New York, I thought I'd go back to Madison Avenue or go up to Chicago and be a copywriter. And there was a huge recession, so I decided the pipe dream would be to get into professional sports and maybe even one day be a general manager. And so I started to research what that would look like. And 70+% of the GMs, including the commissioners in pro sports, were lawyers. So I decided to go to law school with the hope that one day I'd work in professional sports, originally to maybe be a general manager. But after a few years of doing the legal side of the work, I really liked how broad that was and decided I didn't really want to pursue the GM role. I got to do some things on the basketball side and help out for a long time with player contracts, so I liked that. But I really liked all the other stuff and the entire business. So that's how I got started, and I'm super grateful and blessed to have been able to do it for now 27 years.
Absolutely. And was basketball kind of, the sport that you were looking at when you got into this, or did you just kind of...
No, not necessarily. It wasn't. No, I just wanted to get into sports. And I got an opportunity out of law school. I worked with an insurance brokerage company that handles a lot of sports insurance, including the NBA and the NHL temporary disability programs. And they hired me on the NBA side. So I got to know somebody at each of the teams, and then ultimately was hired to come join the then general counsel of the Indiana Pacers, Bob Salyers, who was at one point the president and GM of the team before the Simons bought the team. When the Simons bought the team in 1983, they made Donnie Walsh the president and GM, and Bob became the general counsel. And he started his own firm on the outside because at that point in 1983, being the general counsel of a major league sports team wasn't really full-time yet. The business hadn't grown to the extent that it is now. So I joined him in 1998 when the Fieldhouse was sort of coming out of the ground. And he and I did that together and worked together on all things Pacers and then Fever and then Fieldhouse related for 13 and a half years until I went inside in 2011.
Okay. And, starting from, when you first kind of got into this to now, what would you say, I guess, has changed the most about the job?
The breadth of the job, really, the various things, the complications, the complexity of the sports business. A lot of people think that sports business, you just have games and then you move on to the next day. And there's so many things happening in our business at an incredibly fast rate, and that change. I mean, if you would have told me we would be dealing with data and cybersecurity things 20 years ago, I wouldn't even know what that was. The media rights have exploded. The name, image, likeness that's all in all of sports. Just the absolute breadth of the job. Every day is completely different. You can have a to-do list, and it doesn't really matter because something will come up. And then our business is crazy a little bit in that one thing can happen and the entire strategy of the business changes, and you have to pivot really quickly.
Yeah. I was going to ask, I would assume that, just the branding of the players themselves and obviously the teams has probably changed kind of the scope of your job quite a bit in the digital age, I guess.
Yeah, we don't represent the players, right? They have their own representation and agents, and they have their own endorsement deals and stuff. But even now today, right, in the world of influencers and social media, there's so many things that are happening in that space. So whether they're doing something with their own personal endorsement deal or we're doing something to increase and improve the brand and the marketing of our organization, those two things sometimes start to cross, and you have to make sure that we stay within the guidelines of the NBA or WNBA rules, and also make sure that the players are doing their thing within the rules of their own player contract, right? So there's a lot of complexity in that, and things get on social media all the time now that you wouldn't even have had to consider 15 years ago. And what I mean by that is, the way that someone, we have the fashion walk, right? Mm-hmm. Which isn't something we had 15 years ago. Yeah. And players and brands really like that. And there's certain things we can do with that within the guidelines of the NBA and the WNBA, and there's certain things we can't do. So just even something like that has rules and regulations around it that we have to monitor.
Absolutely. And I know that you said that, most days are not typical. You can have a to-do list and that just kind of gets scrapped. But I guess what would you say is kind of a general day in your life? And I guess how does that change between seasons and off seasons?
Yeah, there's really no typical day anymore. There used to be a little bit of a rhythm where you would have a particular season, you'd go into an off season, although the off season is typically busier than the normal season. People don't realize there's no real downtime, but in the off season, you're renewing sponsorship deals, renewing media rights deals, maybe doing free agency contracts. Lots of that happens in the off season. But now with the Pacers, the Fever, and the Boom, there's no off season, right? So we literally just stopped playing Pacers basketball on Sunday. The Fever are in full swing. In 24 days from now, we have the WNBA All-Star Game, and the Boom are starting now in Noblesville. So there's no typical day, but it can literally run the gamut from I'll just think about today, dealing with a sponsorship issue, a subpoena that I have to respond to, some letters and emails that I need to get to our media partners. I'll go back and review in-house license agreements, stuff that we're working on, trademarks, copyrights. Because we're popular now, the Pacers and Fever are super popular. We get a lot of counterfeit merchandise stuff that we're monitoring and trying to get cease and desist letters out to. So it really runs all over the place. And then just when you think you sort of have a new rhythm, something crazy will come out of the blue, out of nowhere. A bat will fly into your arena, and you'll have to deal with the health department and DNR issues, right? Stuff that you didn't go to law school for, but you try and figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. That was going to be my next kind of question. We're coming off, obviously, of a successful Pacers season and going into another Fever season with Caitlin Clark, specifically, many players, but her specifically at the helm. I guess, how has your role changed just within the past couple years of the Pacers and the Fever kind of taking flight in, the eyes of the media, I guess.
Yeah, I would say that the Fever are essentially another NBA team in terms of its scope at this point. In the past, and we've had a really successful WNBA team since it started, I think in 2000, if I'm correct about that. We've won a championship. But, the NBA season would end, the WNBA season would start after that, and you would manage certain things around, lesser crowds, different sponsorship arrangements, all great and better than average in the WNBA, but not at the scale of the NBA. And now it's completely the same. Like you could have gone to an NBA Finals game, I think Game 6, and then a regular season game of the Fever the next day, and the crowd numbers would have been exactly the same. And that's incredible for the league, for its growth, for its opportunities, for what is happening in the women's game is amazing. So it's very different, though. My friends around the league ask me, hey, can you explain like what's happening at Fever games? I said, not really. You have to come see it because they're all in the industry, so they get it. But then you see it and it's a rock show every night. It's really cool and exciting for women's sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you said that Noblesville Boom, correct, is launching this year.
Yeah.
So I guess what kind of, new responsibilities come with essentially launching a brand new brand to the industry?
So not a new team, but a new name and new brand. So all kinds of marketing goes around that to try and make sure people know who we are, where we're going to be. The arena in Noblesville is really great. It's going to be a great home for the Boom. And you've got to just create awareness, right? You've got to create awareness of who we are and when we're playing. You've got a lot of things you got to do around your intellectual property. You got to get all these trademarks and copyrights in place. And then there's new sponsorship deals. There's the way we work within the arena will be different than the way things work at Gainbridge. We don't own the Noblesville arena, so we're a tenant. So it's a different approach to the way you sell sponsorships and sell tickets and do that thing when you're a tenant versus operating the arena like we do with Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So there's nuances there that we're going to work out and figure out as we go. Some of that's going to be a little bit of a, you have some growing pains as we do, but we'll figure it out as we always do.
Yeah, absolutely. And now looking ahead, you talking about the NBA, let me restart that question. Looking ahead to the WNBA All-Star Game, this is the first time Indianapolis is hosting the game, correct?
Correct.
So what, I guess, does your preparation look like for something like that?
Yeah, the very cool thing is we just hosted the NBA All-Star Game in last February. Mm-hmm. So we had this blueprint ready to go. And when it was announced that we would host the 2025 WNBA All-Star Game, we said, great, we sort of have the mechanisms in place. We know what we need to do. And that's what we're executing off of. So it involves things like making deals and contracts with the league office on the hosting. It involves getting extra security, and it involves getting the city involved so that we have space around the arena that we can use for all sorts of events. We'll use the convention center for the fans to go and enjoy various activities there. We do certain things around our city. Indianapolis is great at hosting major sporting events and other events. So we always, that the All-Star Game is here. When the finals are here, or a Big Ten tournament, or the Final Four. Like in some big cities, that can get lost in the shuffle, but not in Indianapolis because everybody pitches in. So we're ready. We're ready to do it. There's always a ton of different activities to do, whether we need to lease space at various hotels or various places, businesses around the community to host parties and art galleries and different types of things, which is really cool. It gets something for everybody. It's just a lot of effort, all focused on one weekend, but it's not all that different from what we do on a regular basis, just sort of condensed into one weekend. And since we had the blueprint with the NBA, it was kind of a natural extension just to start doing the same things with the WNBA.
Yeah. Is there anything particular that you're kind of excited about leading up to the weekend that you've been working on?
I just get excited for the same reason I get excited about this job in general. It's such a unique industry where we help create memories. Like this whole business is about creating memories for people. And we just obviously just finished Game 7 of the NBA Finals, and to see the community come together, not just locally, but even around the country, to sort of come around the Pacers organization, the number of people you hear from that you haven't heard from in years, which is really cool, talking about what this meant to them. It's the same thing with the All-Star Weekend. When the folks come from all over the country and really all over the world to come see WNBA All-Star, it'll create memories that they'll remember forever, right? I think that's an incredibly unique element of the sports industry. So I'm excited to see how it plays out with the All-Star Game. I'm sure there's even things that I'm not 100% sure are going to happen, but there'll be cool surprises. Things like, I think you may recall, we had like Tyrese drive an Indy car to start off NBA All-Star. I'm sure there's some things like that planned that I'm not even sure of at this moment.
Yeah. I like what you said about, bringing the community together and kind of hearkening back to what you were talking about with Indianapolis coming together. Because I think just as someone who's not necessarily a huge sports fan, it can feel isolating with these events to not, feel connected. But I think something the city does and what the Pacers and Fever organizations do is make it, an environment where there's something for everyone. And it feels very, you feel connected to it, whether you're, in touch or not.
Yeah, there's no question. You don't even have to be a basketball fan to come down and enjoy the festivities. Whether it's drone shows, fireworks, whatever it might be, or music, entertainment, around and about the city. Maybe you don't even like basketball, but you like all of that. So it's worth coming down and experiencing, and then maybe become a basketball fan on top of it. So
absolutely. Is there anything, of your role that you think fans might find surprising, I guess?
I think maybe find surprising that most of what I do has nothing to do with basketball. Mm-hmm. Like, I think a lot of people think, oh, so you work in the NBA or WNBA, so you just sort of go to games and fly around with the team. And no, I go to games, but I don't fly around with the team. I don't, the players don't really know me, right? Like, 54-year-old lawyer guy, like, what, but my job isn't all that much different than the chief legal officer of another major company in town. We're all dealing with the same types of things, whether it's contract negotiation or drafting, immigration issues, tax issues, IP issues. We're lease deals, licensing. We're doing a lot of the same things. It's just at the end of the day, in my job, there's a ball or a game involved, which is what I really love, right? I always loved sports, always wanted to work in sports. Super blessed to have been able to do that. But, somebody working at another company that has a different product, they might be very passionate about that. I'm very passionate about sports and entertainment. So I don't know that I'd love the job in a different industry, but I love the job in this industry. So I think people would be surprised at how little of it actually involves basketball per se. It certainly does to some extent. Obviously, you don't do coaching contracts at another company, but you do executive contracts, and there's some similarities to that.
Yeah. Kind of bouncing off of that, can you draw any parallels between, the game of basketball itself and your role as an attorney?
I could probably make a stretch. No, the reality is the only real connection I would say is like a basketball team, the business side has to all know their role. They have to understand their spot in the business, whether you're in legal or marketing or finance or facilities or whatever. We all have to know our role, but all then figure out how to work together. A good basketball team works together, shares the ball, doesn't care who gets the credit, and puts their egos aside and gets things done, collaborates well and gets things done efficiently and productively that way. And I think it's the same. For a business, it's important for each group to know their job and then also be able to and trust each other and help each other and get to the outcome you're all shooting for. Just like a basketball team is always shooting to be the best team they can to ultimately win the championship.
Yeah. Right. Those are all of my questions. Mr. Pulice, thank you so much for joining me.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And congratulations on a great Pacers season and an exciting Fever season.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun around Indianapolis, so thank you.
Absolutely.